One of the core tenets of the MAGA movement is anti-intellectualism. Not the turn off your brain and watch reality TV kind of anti-intellectualism, although there is a similar cast of characters, but the kind where they're so scared of their own shadows that they want us all to live in the dark. Not only has the government canceled critical funding of bean research because the idea of studying legume systems sounds too silly to be worth paying for, but Trump's lackeys at the FBI are attempting to manufacture consent for a war with China because two researchers had some very common fungus on them. And the entire internet is just roasting the Trump administration for freaking out about very basic science that they're just too stupid to understand. If you like this kind of coverage, breaking down the lies that MAGA tries to sell to the American people, then you can join us here at Really American by subscribing and dropping some blue hearts below. This groundbreaking fungus accusation from FBI Director Kash Patel has Fox News and the entire MAGA shared collective brain cell in meltdown mode about biological terrorism and declarations of war. I swear these people think we live in a Tom Clancy novel.
The FBI is sounding the alarm that our food supply is being targeted by the Chinese Communist Party, as two Chinese nationals have been charged with smuggling a potential agro-terrorism weapon into the U.S.
This is really insane. Lucas Thomason joins us live in Washington with the details. Good morning, Lucas.
Good morning, guys. A Chinese researcher at the University of Michigan and her boyfriend have been accused of smuggling a biological pathogen into the United States that can cause devastating diseases in crops. FBI Director Kash Patel says, quote, "This case is a sobering reminder that the Chinese Communist Party continues to deploy operatives and researchers to infiltrate our institutions and target our food supply, an act that could cripple our economy and endanger American lives. I commend the FBI Detroit Division and our partners at CBP for stopping this biological threat before it could do real damage."
And they say that it's a fungus that causes head blight, a disease of wheat, barley, maize, and rice, and is responsible for billions of dollars in economic losses worldwide each year.
You mean a bioweapon from the Chinese? Have they ever done anything like that before?
Takes us back to COVID, right?
And it just also plays into why we can't have 150,000 Chinese students studying here, a lot of which were party kids from party members. And if you come over and if you think, well, these are good kids, they're 18 years old, what harm are they? As long as their families are back home, they're under obligation to spy for their country. And yet we're training our enemy.
Here's what Kash Patel said. "I can confirm that the FBI arrested a Chinese national within the United States who allegedly smuggled a dangerous biological pathogen into the country. This individual is alleged to have smuggled a dangerous fungus called Fusarium graminearum, which is an agro-terrorism agent, into the United States to research at the University of Michigan, where she works." Interesting. So clearly the framing that Fox News and Kash Patel are running with, that this fungus is some sort of deadly biohazard. Now, if this Chinese spy agent had released this deadly bioweapon into our agricultural industry, it would have completely wiped out our economy. But people who are a little bit more scientifically inclined were quick to point out how incredibly stupid this framing is. This user, who is a student of agricultural science, said, "Jesus effing Christ, the Americans are beyond helping. This is the equivalent of arresting somebody for isolating penicillium fungus from a stale lemon to study it. This disease is already widespread in the US, and they're fucking over a student for nothing." This user said, "It is insane how stupid this guy is. Universities all over the country and the world are constantly researching Fusarium graminearum. It grows everywhere on Earth. Smuggling it is like smuggling a glass of water." And finally, this post is right on. "We're at a stage where anything that comes out of the FBI or any US government agency against the countries that the US considers unfriendly can be considered blatant propaganda or false flag psyop. It is a fact that this fungus is so prevalent, it is literally found all over the world. Look at this chart. Each of these dots is an outbreak. So the fungus is found everywhere. There's even an outbreak on Hawaii. This would be like if a researcher was caught with a sample of like the bubonic plague and they framed it as a bio attack or weapon or something, ignoring the fact that the bacteria that causes the bubonic plague is found literally all over the earth. This is Wuhan Gate all over again, but this time fear-mongering about some sort of Chinese attack on agriculture. Here's a statement from the University of Michigan. We strongly condemn any actions that seek to cause harm, threaten national security, or undermine the university's critical public mission. It is important to note that the university has received no funding from the Chinese government in relation to research conducted by the accused individuals. We have and will continue to cooperate with federal law enforcement in its ongoing investigation and prosecution. So this seems like another one of those cases where a student didn't go through the proper Customs and Border Patrol, like documentation or whatever, for this fungus, but they're labeling it as some sort of attack from a Chinese spy. Because it doesn't really matter the facts of the case. It doesn't matter if there isn't any real threat. This is just an attempt to manufacture consent for an ever-increasing trade war with China that the US might just be losing. Like, for example, when it comes to the precious minerals needed to create superconductors and airplanes. China mines 70% of the world's rare earths, but it does the chemical processing for 90% of them. The country also makes more than 80% of the world's batteries, more than 70% of its electric cars, and half of the world's steel, iron, and aluminum, according to data from the International Energy Agency. Securing an alternative supply would likely require the United States to invest hundreds of billions of dollars, Mr. Rosen said, the co-founder of the Rhodium Group, a research company, and cooperation with global partners who are willing to work to set up supply chains outside of China. It's going to be expensive, he said. We have a long way to go. But this isn't the only place where Trump's policies are shooting the American public in the foot for completely idiotic reasons. The Office of Management and Budget tweeted out a thread bragging about all of the cuts that were made thanks to Elon's Doge. They said, today we sent the new rescissions package to Capitol Hill. This package contains billions in wasteful foreign aid and federal funding for NPR and PBS. You know, the big threat to the American way of life, Sesame Street. Here's just some of the waste, fraud, and abuse identified. One of these things that was canceled quickly caught the attention of the internet, who pointed out how silly it is to cancel this just because it has a silly name. $4 million was canceled for legume systems research. Now, while beans don't exactly sound like the most important thing to be spending money on, it's actually incredibly important. Not only are soybeans one of America's largest crops, but research in agriculture tends to be a net positive for literally the entire world. So why did they cancel this research? Well, that's because legume systems research is being run by Feed the Future, which was established as the U.S. government's Global Hunger and Food Security Initiative. Feed the Future is managed by USAID and funded with the generous support of the American people. Well, not so much anymore. Coincidentally, Michigan State University also works on this initiative, so props to Michigan for being on the forefront of agricultural research. But this research wasn't into growing soybeans directly. It was being used to fund various projects aimed at increasing legume production in various African countries, as well as testing pest management. Now, Republicans will say, well, why are we funding these various things in African countries and not here in the United States? And this is why, according to this article from 2022, so before these programs were being threatened by Donald Trump. Dry bean research returned good worldwide economic value. An economic study which analyzed 40 years of data from international agricultural research efforts led by U.S. universities and financed by USAID showed that an initial investment of $1.24 billion has returned more than $10 billion and more than $8 for each dollar invested worldwide. Among those research programs cited in the study is Feed the Future Innovation Lab for Legume Systems Research, a research and capacity building development program managed by Michigan State University that focuses on grain legumes in West and Southern Africa. It is an inarguable fact that this sort of research is not only valuable for humanitarian purposes, which, mind you, should be enough for any human being to get behind this, but also valuable economically, as the entire global food chain benefits from regional production of stable crops. This isolationist fear-mongering that is happening over on Fox News is being used to not only make us more unhealthy, but to make us weaker and makes the world more dependent on Chinese supply chains, seemingly the opposite of what Trump is trying to do? Don't you just love having a master of the art of the deal as president, trading our seat as the only world superpower in exchange for America's own version of the Dark Ages? I'm Tony Hinderman with Really American, and I'll catch you next time.